The morning sun poured through the tall windows of the Grand, one of the many hotels owned by the Westfield family. Sophia Westfield stirred her mimosa with a silver straw, barely listening as her friends chatted around her. These monthly brunches always felt the same: gossip about who was dating whom, which marriages were on the rocks, and endless talk about vacation homes and jewelry. "I'm bored," announced Vivian, setting down her champagne flute with more force than necessary. "We need something exciting." Sophia glanced up, her perfectly manicured eyebrow raised slightly. At 32, she had everything money could buy: designer clothes, luxury cars, a penthouse apartment, and her pick of eligible bachelors from good families. Yet lately even she had to admit life felt oddly empty. "Like what?" asked Rachel, the youngest of their group at 29. "Another trip? We just got back from Milan." Vivian's red lips curved into a smile that made Sophia sit up straighter. That smile usually meant trouble. "I've been thinking," Vivian said, leaning forward. "We always talk about love and marriage like they're these magical things. But let's be honest, they're just business deals dressed up with flowers and pretty words." The other women laughed, nodding in agreement. "So here's my thought," Vivian continued, her eyes landing on Sophia. "One of us should prove it. Marry someone completely wrong for you, someone who would never fit in our world, and show everyone it's all just a game." Sophia snorted. "And who's your lucky volunteer?" The table went quiet as all eyes turned to her. "Me?" Sophia laughed. "You can't be serious. Who better?" Vivian shrugged. "You're the richest, the prettiest, and let's face it, the most cynical about love after what happened with Thomas." Sophia's smile faltered slightly at the mention of her ex-fiancé, who had left her for her cousin last year. "I'll make it worth your while," Vivian added. "If you marry someone like that and stay married for a full year, I'll give you my place in the Maldives." A buzz went around the table. Vivian's family owned the most beautiful beachfront property on a private island, the one place Sophia had always envied. "And if I lose?" Sophia asked, her business instincts kicking in despite herself. "You give me your grandmother's sapphire earrings," Vivian replied smoothly. Sophia touched her ear automatically, feeling the weight of the priceless family heirlooms she was wearing. Something flickered in her chest. Doubt, perhaps, but she pushed it away. She never backed down from a challenge. "Fine," she said, raising her glass. "I'll find someone, marry him, and be divorced with a new island property this time next year." The women clinked glasses, laughing at the outrageousness of it all. But Sophia was already scanning her mental calendar, wondering where she might find a suitable candidate for this strange experiment. 3 weeks later, Sophia stood in the grand ballroom of the Westfield Foundation's annual charity gala, greeting guests with a practiced smile. Her father had insisted she take a more active role in the family's charitable work, claiming it would build character. Sophia suspected it had more to do with good publicity for their hotel chain, but she played along. "The Marine Conservation Grant recipients are arriving," her assistant whispered. "Your father wants you to personally welcome them." Sophia nodded, smoothing down her midnight blue gown before making her way to the entrance. A group of scientists in varying degrees of formal wear were being shown in, looking uncomfortable among the wealthy donors. Her eyes landed on a man standing slightly apart from the others. He was tall, easily 6'3", with broad shoulders and a substantial waistline that his ill-fitting suit did little to hide. His dark hair fell across his forehead as he pushed his glasses up his nose, looking around the room with an expression that suggested he'd rather be anywhere else. "Dr. Cooper?" Sophia approached him with her hand extended. "I'm Sophia Westfield. We're so pleased you could join us tonight." He turned, and Sophia was struck by the intensity of his blue eyes behind those simple frames. When he smiled, his whole face transformed. "James Cooper," he replied, his handshake firm but gentle. "Thank you for the Foundation's support. Our work mapping coral reef decline wouldn't be possible without it." His voice was deep and clear, lacking the practiced smoothness of the men in her social circle. There was something refreshingly direct about him. An idea began to form in Sophia's mind. "I'd love to hear more about your work," she said, leading him toward the champagne. "It sounds fascinating." James looked surprised but followed her. "Most people at these events just want the short version." "I'm not most people," Sophia replied with a smile that had opened doors for her all her life. For the next hour, she listened as James explained his research on marine ecosystems. Despite herself, she found some of it genuinely interesting. The way he talked about the ocean with such passion made it come alive. His hands moved expressively as he spoke, and occasionally he would forget himself and use technical terms, then backtrack with an apologetic smile to explain. "Sorry," he said after one such moment. "My team tells me I get carried away." "Don't apologize," Sophia said. "It's refreshing to talk about something real for a change." And strangely, she meant it. After so many conversations about stock portfolios and real estate investments, there was something appealing about someone who cared so deeply about something beyond himself. When Sophia excused herself to visit the ladies' room, she took out her phone and quickly texted Vivian. "I think I found him. Overweight scientist, completely oblivious to who I am. Perfect for the bet." Vivian's response came immediately. "Pictures or it didn't happen." Sophia returned to find James talking with her father, animatedly describing some research breakthrough. She snapped a discreet photo and sent it before rejoining them. "Sophia," her father said, "Dr. Cooper has been explaining how his team is developing new methods to regrow coral. I've invited him to present his findings at next month's environmental summit at our Maui property." "Wonderful idea," Sophia agreed. "Perhaps I could help Dr. Cooper prepare his presentation. I have experience in making technical information accessible to our donors." Her father looked surprised. Sophia rarely volunteered for foundation work, but pleased. "That's very thoughtful, honey." James glanced between them. "That's really not necessary, I insist," Sophia said, touching his arm lightly. "We want your important work to get the attention it deserves." Later, as the evening wound down, Sophia handed James her business card. "Call me next week and we'll set up a time to work on your presentation. I'm still not sure why you're doing this," James said frankly. "But thank you." Sophia gave him her most sincere smile, the one that had won over countless business partners and suitors. "Sometimes people can surprise you, Dr. Cooper." As her driver took her home that night, Sophia's phone buzzed with messages from her friends, all responding to the picture of James. "OMG, is that him? He's huge. Does he know how to use a gym? This is going to be epic." Sophia looked at the picture she'd taken. It didn't capture the intelligence in his eyes or the warmth of his smile. For a moment, something like guilt flickered in her chest. Then she remembered the beachfront property that would soon be hers, and the feeling faded. "Game on," she murmured to herself as the city lights flashed by outside her window. 1 year of her life in exchange for winning the bet seemed like a small price to pay. How hard could it be to make someone like James fall in love with her? What Sophia didn't know was that the game she was starting would change all the rules she'd lived by. And the person who would be most surprised in the end would be herself. 3 days after the charity gala, Sophia sat in her office at Westfield Hotel's headquarters, staring at her phone. James Cooper hadn't called. Men always called her, usually much sooner than she wanted them to. She drummed her perfectly manicured nails on her desk, annoyed that her plan wasn't unfolding as smoothly as expected. "Fine," she muttered, picking up her phone. She found the foundation's contact list and dialed his number herself. James answered on the fourth ring, sounding distracted. "Dr. Cooper speaking." "James, it's Sophia Westfield." "From the gala?" A pause. "Oh, Ms. Westfield. Sorry, I'm in the middle of analyzing some data. How can I help you?" Sophia frowned. He hadn't even remembered he was supposed to call her. "I was following up about helping with your presentation for the Maui summit." "Right," he said. "To be honest, I'm comfortable presenting my research as is. I've done it dozens of times at scientific conferences." This wasn't going according to plan at all. Sophia switched tactics. "Actually, I've been reading about coral reef conservation since we met," she said, quickly pulling up an article on her computer. "It's fascinating work. I'd love to hear more about it over coffee sometime." Another pause, longer this time. "You've been reading about coral reefs? Is that so hard to believe?" she asked, allowing a hint of challenge in her voice. "Most people don't find scientific journals light reading," he replied, but she could hear a smile in his voice now. "But coffee sounds nice. I could do tomorrow afternoon." Sophia checked her calendar, which showed a lunch meeting with a hotel investor. "Tomorrow works perfectly," she said, already planning to reschedule. The coffee shop James suggested was nothing like the upscale cafes Sophia usually frequented. It was a small place near his lab with mismatched furniture and chalkboard menus. Sophia had dressed down in what she considered casual clothes, designer jeans and a simple blouse that had cost more than most people's monthly rent. James was already there when she arrived, hunched over a laptop at a corner table. He wore khakis and a blue button-down shirt with the sleeves rolled up, revealing surprisingly strong forearms. He stood when he saw her, nearly knocking over his chair in the process. "Sorry," he said, pushing his glasses up. "I was just finishing something. Thanks for coming all the way over here." "No problem," Sophia replied, looking around. "This place has character," James laughed. "Best coffee in the city, and they donate a percentage of profits to ocean cleanup efforts. Win-win." Over the next hour, Sophia employed every trick she'd learned about keeping men interested. She leaned forward when he spoke, asked questions about his work, and laughed at his jokes. What surprised her was how little effort it eventually took. James spoke with such genuine enthusiasm about his research that she found herself actually listening. "The thing about coral reefs," he explained, his blue eyes lighting up, "is that they're like the rainforests of the ocean. They cover less than 1% of the ocean floor but support about 25% of all marine species." "That's incredible," Sophia said, meaning it. "And they're dying?" James nodded, his expression turning serious. "At an alarming rate. That's what our project is trying to address. We're developing ways to help them adapt to warming waters. And the Westfield Foundation grant helps with that? It's making all the difference," he said. "Your family's support means we can expand our test sites to 3 new locations." Sophia felt an unexpected twinge of pride in her family's money actually doing something worthwhile, rather than just funding another gala or museum wing. By their 3rd coffee date the following week, Sophia no longer needed to fake interest. James was unlike anyone in her social circle. He cared deeply about his work, spoke honestly without the polished charm she was used to, and seemed completely unimpressed by her wealth or status. "You really don't know who I am, do you?" she asked him one evening as they walked along the harbor after dinner. James looked confused. "You're Sophia Westfield. Your family owns hotels, and you're surprisingly interested in marine biology. For someone who could be spending her time doing, well, whatever rich people do for fun," Sophia laughed. "The Westfield hotel chain is worth over $2 billion. My picture has been in society pages since I was 16. Most men I meet have researched everything about me before our first date." James stopped walking and faced her. "Is that what these are? Dates?" Sophia hadn't meant to say that. She was supposed to be in control of this situation. I don't know. Are they?" For a moment, they just looked at each other. Then James smiled, a slow, warm smile that reached his eyes. "I'd like them to be." Over the next 2 months, Sophia crafted what looked like a natural romance. She attended James's lectures at the university, invited him to carefully selected events where he would meet her friends, who behaved themselves after stern warnings from Sophia, and arranged for a photographer from a society magazine to happen upon them during a weekend in the Hamptons. Every few days, she sent updates to Vivian and her other friends, who responded with a mix of disbelief and delight at her commitment to the bet. But gradually, Sophia found herself checking those messages less often and looking forward to her time with James more. "You know," James said one night as they sat on the balcony of her penthouse, sharing a bottle of wine, "when we first met, I was sure you were just using me for some kind of publicity stunt for your foundation. Wealthy heiress takes interest in unfashionable scientists' work. That sort of thing." Sophia nearly choked on her wine. "Why would you think that?" He shrugged his broad shoulders. "Because look at you and look at me. Women like you don't usually show interest in men like me without an agenda." The truth hovered on her lips, but she swallowed it back. "Maybe I just see something in you that others don't." "Maybe," he said, watching her carefully. "Or maybe you're different from what I expected too." As summer turned to fall, Sophia realized with alarm that she was thinking about James even when they weren't together. She found herself wondering what he would think about a book she was reading or a news story about ocean conservation. She'd catch herself smiling at her phone when he texted, not because it was part of her plan, but because his messages were thoughtful and often funny in a dry, clever way. The night he first kissed her, after a dinner where he'd excitedly told her about a breakthrough in his research, she'd felt something stir inside her that she hadn't expected. Something real. "This is getting out of hand," Rachel warned her over lunch one day. "You were supposed to make him fall for you, not the other way around." Don't be ridiculous, Sophia scoffed. I know exactly what I'm doing, but did she? When James took her to meet his parents, kind, down-to-earth people who welcomed her warmly despite clearly being intimidated by her wealth, she found herself wanting their approval in a way that had nothing to do with the bet. 3 months after their first coffee, James took her on a boat trip to see some of his research sites. As they stood at the rail watching the sunset turn the water to gold, he turned to her with uncharacteristic nervousness. I know this is fast, he said, taking her hands in his much larger ones. And I know there are a million reasons why someone like you shouldn't be with someone like me. But these past months have been the happiest of my life. Sophia's heart began to race as he awkwardly got down on one knee on the rocking boat. I don't have a fancy ring yet, he said, looking up at her with those sincere blue eyes. And I can't offer you the life you're used to. But I love you, Sophia Westfield, and if you'll marry me, I promise to make you happy every day. Time seemed to stop. This was exactly what she'd planned, what she'd manipulated into happening. She should feel triumphant. Instead, she felt a confusing mix of emotions: guilt, excitement, fear, and something else she couldn't name. Yes, she heard herself say, the word coming out before she could think it through. Yes, I'll marry you. As he stood and wrapped her in his arms, lifting her off her feet with surprising strength, Sophia caught a glimpse of her reflection in the boat's window. The woman looking back at her seemed like a stranger, flushed, smiling, and in the arms of a man she had chosen for all the wrong reasons, but who was beginning to feel surprisingly right. The wedding was small and hastily arranged, nothing like the society event Sophia had once pictured for herself. Only James's family attended, his parents beaming with happiness while his younger sister looked at Sophia with barely concealed suspicion. None of Sophia's friends came. They were waiting to celebrate her victory afterward. As she said her vows in a simple white dress, holding hands with this man who gazed at her with complete adoration, Sophia pushed away the voice in her head asking what would happen when the year was up and the bet was won. That was a problem for another day. Right now, she had a marriage to begin and a husband to convince that their love was as real as he believed it to be. Moving in together happened quickly after the wedding. Sophia had suggested they live in her penthouse. It made sense given its size and central location, but to her surprise, James hesitated. It's beautiful, he said, looking around at her sleek, professionally decorated space, but it doesn't feel like a home we'd build together. It's your home. Sophia hadn't considered that. No one had ever questioned her taste before. They compromised on a spacious apartment closer to James's research lab. Sophia hired movers for her things while James showed up with just a few boxes of books, clothes, and scientific equipment. That's all you have? Sophia asked, watching him unpack worn sweaters and faded jeans. I've moved around a lot for research, he explained. Never saw the point in collecting stuff. Living with someone day to day was entirely new to Sophia. She'd always kept boyfriends at a comfortable distance, never allowing them to see her without makeup or first thing in the morning. Now she was sharing a bathroom, a kitchen, and a bed with a man who snored lightly and left damp towels on the floor. The strangest part was how quickly it began to feel normal. James's work schedule was intense. He often left before dawn for early dives or stayed late at the lab analyzing data. Some nights she'd find him asleep at his desk, his glasses askew, surrounded by research papers. You need to take better care of yourself, she told him one night, guiding him to bed after finding him nodding off over his laptop. Says the woman who had espresso for dinner yesterday, he mumbled sleepily. Sophia realized he was right. She'd always viewed her body as something to be maintained for appearance's sake. Regular workouts, strict diets, beauty treatments. James treated his as an afterthought, a vehicle for his mind to do the work he cared about. One evening, after noticing James had skipped lunch and dinner again, she ordered delivery from a nearby restaurant. When the food arrived, he emerged from his home office looking surprised. You got dinner? He asked, blinking at the spread of containers on their dining table. Someone has to make sure you eat, she replied, trying to sound casual. He smiled, that warm smile that still made her heart beat faster. Thank you. Sometimes I forget. As they ate, Sophia found herself asking something she'd been curious about. James, can I ask you something personal? About your weight? He set down his fork. Sure. You're so health conscious about the ocean and environment. I was wondering why I don't apply that to myself, he finished for her. He didn't seem offended. Partly habit, partly genetics, and partly medical. I have an underactive thyroid condition that makes it harder to maintain a healthy weight. Was diagnosed in my 20s. I didn't know, Sophia said, feeling embarrassed. No reason you would. I take medication, but between that, stress eating during research crunches and prioritizing work over exercise. He shrugged. My doctor gives me the same lecture every year. Does it bother you? She asked. How people see you. James considered this. Sometimes. In professional settings, people occasionally don't take me seriously until I start talking. And dating was challenging. Women would often dismiss me before getting to know me. He looked at her with genuine curiosity. What made you different? Why did you give me a chance when most women who look like you wouldn't? The question hit Sophia like a splash of cold water. She should tell him the truth now. End this charade before it went any further, but looking at him across the table, she couldn't bear to see the hurt that would come with the truth. I saw something real in you, she said instead. Something genuine. And as the words left her mouth, she realized they weren't entirely a lie. 3 months into their marriage, Sophia caught a terrible flu. She'd never been seriously ill before and was a terrible patient. Cranky, demanding, and miserable. You don't have to stay home, she told James, her voice raspy, as he brought her tea and medicine. I can call my assistant. You're my wife, he said simply. Where else would I be? For 3 days he worked from home, checking on her between video calls and data analysis. On the second night, when her fever spiked and she couldn't stop shivering, he wrapped her in blankets and held her until she fell asleep, his large body radiating comforting warmth. On the third day, she woke to a delicious smell coming from the kitchen. She shuffled out in her silk pajamas to find James cooking something on the stove. What is that? She asked, still sniffling. My mom's chicken soup, he said. Guaranteed cure for everything from flu to heartbreak. Family recipe. The soup was nothing like the refined cuisine Sophia was used to, but as the rich broth with tender chicken, vegetables, and herbs warmed her from the inside out, she had to admit it was exactly what she needed. This is amazing, she said between spoonfuls. James looked pleased. My grandmother taught my mom, who taught me. First thing I learned to cook. You never mentioned you could cook. You never asked, he said gently. There's probably a lot we still don't know about each other. The realization stung because she knew most of what he didn't know about her was deliberate deception. We were starting to think you'd disappeared into domestic bliss, Vivian said with a smirk when Sophia finally met her friends for lunch the following week. Just been busy, Sophia replied, noticing how different the restaurant they'd chosen felt now. Too loud, too showy. The food more about appearance than taste. So how's married life with the whale? Rachel asked, not bothering to lower her voice. Sophia flinched. His name is James. Ooh, defensive, Vivian laughed. Don't tell me you're actually enjoying playing house with him. He's my husband, Sophia said, the word feeling strange but right on her tongue. For now, Vivian reminded her. 5 more months and you'll have won the bet and can dump him for someone who doesn't make your furniture groan. The other women laughed, but Sophia felt something twist inside her. He's actually incredibly intelligent and kind. Sure, honey, Vivian patted her hand condescendingly. You're really committing to the role. I respect that. By the time the bill came, Sophia had a headache and a growing realization that she no longer enjoyed these women's company. Had they always been this cruel? This shallow? Or had something changed in her? 6 months into their marriage, Sophia woke one Sunday to find James's side of the bed empty. She found him on their small balcony watching the sunrise with a cup of coffee. Early riser, she said, joining him. Best time of day, he replied, wrapping an arm around her. It felt natural now to lean into his warmth. As they stood together in comfortable silence, Sophia realized with a start that she couldn't remember the last time she'd thought about the bet. Somewhere along the way, this marriage had stopped being a game and started being her life. A life she was surprisingly content with. Her phone buzzed on the nearby table. A message from Vivian. Halfway there. Still have those screenshots of our bet to keep you motivated. Don't go soft on me now. Attached was a picture of their text exchange from 6 months ago, with Sophia's words clearly visible. Found the perfect target. Overweight scientist. This will be easy. Sophia quickly deleted the message, her heart pounding. She glanced at James, but he was still gazing at the sunrise. His expression peaceful, that night. Watching him sleep beside her, his face relaxed and vulnerable, a terrifying thought struck Sophia with the force of absolute clarity. She was falling in love with her husband, not for show. Not for a bet. For real. And if he ever discovered the truth about why she'd married him, she would lose him forever. As their first anniversary approached, Sophia found herself in a strange position. She should be celebrating, not her marriage, but winning the bet. Instead, she was trying to figure out how to keep her marriage going after the year was up without James ever discovering the truth. "We should plan something special," James said one evening as they washed dishes together. A domestic ritual Sophia had come to enjoy. "For our anniversary, what did you have in mind?" she asked, trying to ignore the knot of guilt in her stomach. "I was thinking we could go back to the coast where I proposed. Rent that same boat." His eyes crinkled when he smiled now, lines that Sophia found herself tracing with her finger when he was asleep. "That sounds perfect," she said, meaning it. Later that week, Sophia was out shopping with her mother, who had finally warmed to James after months of skepticism. "He's not what I pictured for you," her mother admitted as they browsed anniversary gifts. "But he makes you happy. I can see that." "He does," Sophia said, surprising herself with how easily the truth came out. "You've changed this past year," her mother observed. "In a good way. You seem more grounded." Sophia thought about that on her way home. She had changed. The woman who had entered into a marriage for a bet now struggled to recognize that version of herself. The thought of hurting James made her physically ill, but every day they were together was built on a lie. She'd been avoiding Vivian and her other friends, making excuses to miss lunches and parties. The bet was rarely mentioned now, as if they all understood that something had shifted, but soon the year would be up, and she'd have to face them. And the truth. Walking into their apartment, Sophia called out for James but got no answer. His car had been in the garage, so he was home somewhere. She found his office door closed, which was unusual. He typically left it open in case she wanted to talk. She knocked softly. "James, you in there?" No answer. She pushed the door open gently. The room was empty, but James's laptop was open on his desk. Next to it lay Sophia's own laptop, which she'd been looking for earlier. She must have left it in his office. She was about to close the door when she noticed what was on her screen, an open folder labeled "The Bet." Her blood ran cold. Sophia had created the folder months ago to store screenshots of messages with Vivian and the others, keeping track of the bet even as she'd begun to regret it. She'd meant to delete it, but never had. With shaking hands, she sat down and clicked through the open files. Text messages from the beginning. Found the perfect target. Photos of James at the charity gala with mocking comments. A detailed timeline she'd created, marking milestones in their relationship with notes like Phase 1, initial contact successful, and Phase 2, target showing romantic interest. The bathroom door opened behind her, and James stepped out. She hadn't realized he was in the attached bathroom. His face was pale, his eyes red-rimmed. "James," she whispered, unable to find any other words. "I was looking for that document we worked on last night," he said, his voice flat. "You said it was on your laptop. I found something else instead." Sophia stood up, reaching for him. "James, please let me explain." He stepped back, avoiding her touch. "Explain what? That our entire relationship was a game to you? That you married me for a bet?" His voice broke on the last word. "It started that way," she admitted, tears filling her eyes. "But it changed. I changed." "When?" he asked. "When did it change, Sophia? When you were documenting our first kiss for your friends, or when you were reporting on my proposal?" "I don't know exactly," she said desperately. "It happened slowly and then all at once. But what I feel for you now is real." James shook his head, running a hand through his hair in a gesture she'd come to love. "How would I know?" "How would I ever know what's real with you?" He moved past her to the closet and pulled out a duffel bag. With mechanical movements, he began packing clothes. "What are you doing?" Sophia asked, panic rising in her throat. "What does it look like?" "I'm leaving." "No," she pleaded. "We can work through this. People make mistakes." James stopped and looked at her. really looked at her for the first time since she'd entered the room. A mistake is forgetting an anniversary or saying something hurtful in an argument. This was calculated. You documented it all. He gestured to the computer. You tracked it like a science experiment. James, please, did you ever stop to think about how it would feel for me? His voice was quiet now, which was somehow worse than if he'd been shouting. To find out the woman I loved, the woman I thought loved me, only chose me because I was overweight and unfashionable enough to win her a bet? Sophia had no answer. She'd never allowed herself to think that far ahead. I believed in us, he continued. While you were keeping score, I was building a future in my mind. Picturing holidays together, children maybe, growing old with someone who saw past appearances to who I really am. He zipped the bag closed. But you never saw me at all, did you? Just a ticket to winning your bet. That's not true, Sophia whispered. Not anymore. James slung the bag over his shoulder. The hardest part is that I still love you. Even knowing what you did. How pathetic is that? He walked past her to the door, then stopped. I thought you were different from how people described you. I defended you to my sister, my colleagues. Turns out everyone else saw you clearly. I was the blind one. The sound of the front door closing echoed through the apartment, leaving Sophia alone with the evidence of her cruelty displayed on the screen before her. 3 days passed with no word from James. Sophia called and texted until his voicemail was full. She went to his lab, but his colleagues said he'd taken a leave of absence. His parents didn't answer her calls. She moved through her days in a fog, the reality of what she'd lost becoming clearer with each passing hour. On the 4th day, she showed up at her father's office unannounced, something she hadn't done since she was a teenager. To her surprise, he canceled his meetings to sit with her. I've made a terrible mistake, she told him, breaking down in tears, between sobs. She explained everything, the bet, her initial plan, how real feelings had developed, and finally, James discovering the truth. She expected her father to be disappointed or angry. Instead, he listened quietly, his expression sad but understanding. You know, he said when she'd finished, I almost lost your mother in a similar way. Sophia looked up in surprise. Her parents' marriage had always seemed perfect. Before we were married, I treated relationships like business transactions, he explained. Your mother caught me making a comment to a friend about how dating her was good for the company's image, since her family had the right connections. What happened? Sophia asked. She left me, refused to see me for months. He smiled faintly at the memory. I sent flowers, gifts, apologies, nothing worked. Finally, her brother told me to stop trying to buy her back and start proving I'd changed. How did you do that? By becoming someone worthy of her. Not just saying I'd changed, but actually changing. He leaned forward. Sophia, the question isn't whether you deserve forgiveness. It's what you're willing to sacrifice to earn it. That night, alone in the apartment that no longer felt like home, Sophia stood before the mirror in her bathroom. The woman who looked back at her was physically the same, still beautiful, still privileged, but her eyes held a pain and understanding that hadn't been there before. For the first time in her life, Sophia saw herself clearly. She'd been raised to value appearances, to view relationships as accessories, to measure her worth by what she owned rather than who she was. And she'd lost the one person who had seen the possibility of something better in her. Opening her laptop, she bypassed the folder that had destroyed her marriage and navigated to her bank accounts. With a few clicks, she transferred half of her personal fortune to a new account. Then she called her assistant. I need you to set up a meeting with the foundation's lawyers tomorrow, she said, and find me the contact information for the best marine conservation experts in the world. May I ask what this is regarding? Her assistant asked. Sophia looked at her wedding photo on the nightstand, James's smile radiant and genuine beside her practiced one. Redemption, she answered, and a new beginning, whether I deserve one or not. 3 months after James walked out of their apartment, Sophia stood on the deck of a research vessel off the coast of the Maldives. The sun beat down on her shoulders, now tanned from weeks spent outdoors. Her designer clothes had been replaced by practical shorts, a weathered t-shirt and a wide-brimmed hat. Ms. Westfield, we're ready for the next dive, called one of the researchers, a young woman who had initially been suspicious of Sophia, but had gradually accepted her presence. Sophia nodded, trying to ignore the flutter of anxiety in her stomach. Despite weeks of training, she still hadn't conquered her fear of deep water. But that was the point. doing things that scared her, stepping outside the protective bubble of privilege she'd lived in all her life. As she checked her equipment with shaky hands, she thought about the path that had led her here. After James left, she'd thrown herself into learning everything she could about marine conservation. She'd established the Cooper Westfield Marine Research Foundation, pouring half her fortune into funding projects that aligned with James's work. The Maldives property, the one she would have won in the bet, had been converted into a state-of-the-art research center. The irony wasn't lost on her. The prize she'd married James to win was now dedicated to his life's passion. She hadn't tried to contact him directly again. Instead, she'd written him one letter, explaining what she was doing and why, making it clear she expected nothing in return. She didn't know if he'd ever read it. "Remember, stay close to me," her diving instructor said as they prepared to enter the water. "This reef is delicate." Sophia took a deep breath and plunged in. The initial shock of the water gave way to wonder as the colorful ecosystem came into view. Schools of fish darted between coral formations, some healthy and vibrant, others bleached and struggling. This was James's world, the one he had tried to share with her when she'd been too self-absorbed to truly appreciate it. After the dive, as the boat headed back to the research station, Sophia checked her phone. A message from her assistant. Dr. Thomas called. "They've located him." Her heart skipped. For weeks, she'd had people discreetly looking for James. All she knew was that he'd taken a sabbatical from his university position and joined a research expedition. "Where?" she texted back. The response came quickly. "Galapagos Islands. Working with a team studying the impact of climate change on marine ecosystems." Sophia looked out at the endless blue horizon. The Galapagos, on the other side of the world. The small plane bumped through turbulence as it approached the islands. Sophia gripped the armrests, wondering for the 100th time if she was making a mistake. James might not want to see her. He might have moved on. He might take one look at her and walk away, just as he had that day in their apartment. But she had to try. Not because she expected forgiveness, but because he deserved to know the truth about who she had become. The research station was a cluster of modest buildings overlooking a pristine bay. Sophia had dressed simply. Khaki pants, a plain blue shirt, her hair pulled back in a ponytail. No designer labels, no makeup beyond sunscreen. The woman who stepped off the boat onto the dock barely resembled the society princess who had once viewed people as props in her life. A researcher pointed her toward a small beach where a team was gathering samples. Dr. Cooper should be there. The tall one with the beard. James had always been clean-shaven. Another change in these months apart. She spotted him at the water's edge, crouched over a tide pool with two other scientists. He was gesturing animatedly, pointing out something in the water. Even from a distance, she could see his passion for the work. He looked different, thinner, his skin darkened by the sun, and yes, sporting a short beard. The sight of him made her heart ache with a mixture of love and regret. Sophia waited until the others moved further down the beach before approaching. When James looked up and saw her, he froze. For a long moment, they just stared at each other, the sound of waves filling the silence between them. "Sophia," he finally said, her name sounding strange and familiar all at once on his lips. "Hello, James." Her carefully prepared speech vanished from her mind. "You look well." He straightened up, brushing sand from his hands. "What are you doing here?" "I needed to see you. To talk to you." She swallowed hard. "But first I have something for you." From her bag she pulled out a folder and handed it to him. Inside were legal documents. The deed to the Maldives property, now officially registered as a marine research center under his name, and divorce papers giving him a generous settlement. James flipped through them, his expression unreadable. "What is this?" "The research center is yours," she said. "No strings attached. And the divorce papers. I thought you'd want them." He looked up sharply. "Is that what you want? A divorce?" The question caught her off guard. I thought it was what you would want." "After what I did?" James set the folder down on a nearby rock. "You didn't answer my question." Sophia took a deep breath. "No, it's not what I want. But what I want stopped mattering the day you found those files. I'm here because you deserve better than what I did to you. You deserve this center, this work, and you deserve to be free of me." She turned to look out at the ocean, gathering her courage. "I won't ask you to forgive me. I just wanted you to know that meeting you changed me. The person I was when we met. I don't recognize her anymore. I've heard about what you've been doing, James said quietly. The foundation. The research funding. My colleagues talk about the mysterious benefactor who appeared out of nowhere. It wasn't for show, Sophia said quickly. And it wasn't to impress you. I needed to do something meaningful with my life. Something real. James studied her face. You learned to dive, she gave a small laugh. Terrified every time. But yes, why? Because I was afraid. And I needed to stop letting fear make my decisions. She met his eyes. The old Sophia would never have done something that didn't benefit her directly. That didn't make her look good. They stood in silence for a moment, the gulf between them filled with months of separate lives and unspoken words. What shocked me most, James finally said, wasn't the bet. Sophia looked at him questioningly. What shocked me was watching you transform from someone who was playing at life to someone who was actually living it. I saw it happening before I found those files. Little by little, you were becoming real. I didn't deserve you, she whispered. Probably not, he agreed, and despite everything, a small smile tugged at his lips. But deserving isn't always how life works. He picked up a shell from the sand, turning it over in his hands. I don't want your property or your money, Sophia. I never did, her heart sank. Of course he wouldn't. James had never cared about material things. What I want, he continued, is to know if the woman standing in front of me now is real. If the person you've become is someone who could love honestly, without games or pretense. Sophia felt tears threatening. She's trying to be. Every day, James nodded slowly. Then maybe that's somewhere to start. Start? Hope flickered to life inside her. Not where we left off, he said firmly. That relationship was built on a lie. But maybe something new. Something honest from the beginning. He held out his hand. I'm James Cooper. I study marine ecosystems and how to protect them. I work too much, I forget to eat regular meals. And I have a medical condition that makes it hard to maintain a healthy weight. Nice to meet you. Sophia looked at his outstretched hand, then back at his face. The kindness in his eyes nearly undid her. She took his hand in hers. I'm Sophia Westfield. I'm learning about marine conservation. I'm trying to be a better person than I was. And I'm terrified of deep water, but I dive anyway because some things are worth facing your fears for. As their hands remained clasped, longer than a normal handshake would warrant, Sophia realized that the final shock in her journey wasn't that she had fallen in love with the man she'd married for a bet. It was discovering that true wealth had nothing to do with the money in her bank accounts or the properties she owned. Real wealth was the capacity to grow, to love authentically, and to find purpose beyond yourself. And standing there on a beach thousands of miles from her old life, holding the hand of a man who was giving her a second chance she hadn't dared hope for, Sophia finally understood what it meant to be truly rich.